So today, because we had a couple of calls yesterday that were relationship calls, we are taking your relationship calls. So, dear Abby in the house here, over at the Ben Shapiro Show. Garrett in Wyoming, you're on the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, Garrett.
Hey, Ben, how's it going?
Oh, it's going okay.
I was just wondering, should I ask a girl out or should I try to keep the relationship and not ruin the friendship? What should I do?
You should ask the girl out. So I'm a big proponent of being very straightforward when it comes to relationship stuff. I think it is a horrible idea for guys to try and sort of ingratiate themselves with girls and then become friends, and then maybe we'll see where this goes. Number one, there is the serious danger of being friend-zoned, meaning that once a girl starts to think of you as a friend rather than as a romantic interest, that could be a serious problem. And two, you could invest an awful lot of time in building up to a relationship that you actually are not particularly interested in, because it turns out that you're romantically interested in someone, and it creates an awful lot of tension. You know, I tend to be of the When Harry Met Sally mindset when it comes to, can men be friends with women? And you can be, I think you can be friends with women if the boundaries are very, very clearly set. And this is particularly true if everybody's already married. So, for example, I'm good friends with Elisha Krause. Elisha and I have known each other for a very, very long time, and we've known each other when both of us were married. And so it was always obvious to everyone that this was never going to be a thing, nor did either of us want it to be a thing. But when you're single, particularly, those boundaries are really, really weird. And it gets weirder if you end up in a relationship and then you're still hanging out with a girl who is single, or if she's in a relationship and you're still hanging out with her and you're sort of a third wheel. So my typical feeling here is that you should be straightforward. I think the biggest mistake guys make is not being straightforward with girls when it comes to this sort of stuff. I think it's a huge mistake for men to sort of edge around and take their time. My strategy was always pretty straightforward. Again, I would, if I thought a girl was attractive and I was interested in her, I would walk up to her and I would ask her out to coffee, and then we would see where it went from there. Because at least now the parameters are clear. I'm a big fan of clear parameters, Garrett.
Thanks, Ben. I know this will help me out and a lot of other people.
Well, I appreciate it, Garrett. So, yeah, have some courage, guys. What's the worst that happens? She says no. All right. Well, you know, your life ain't over. Elias in Florida, you're on the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, Elias.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Oh, it's going, dude.
All right, man. So I'm a big fan of your show. I've been watching you for a while, and I have some questions here. So, or just one question. So I know when you and your wife were dating, you guys set some parameters as to what your beliefs were and kind of like what your principles were. But sometimes you unexpectedly fall in love with someone in your friend group or maybe a coworker or a classmate. And so that happened to me. I was with a girl for 5 years. But if I had chosen her from the start, I would have known that, you know, me and her had different beliefs. So my question is, when you have different beliefs with someone who you really like and you fall in love with and they share the same thing, do you still pursue the relationship? What do you do? If you are pursuing the relationship, what happens? Me and her drifted apart because we had different beliefs in the end, and that kind of made us drive apart. So,
yeah,
you know, is this something I could have done differently, or are these relationships just doomed from the start?
So I think that habit is one of the worst things that can happen to a relationship. Habit happens to every relationship, by the way. This always happens. It happens within marriages. If you share values, that's fine, right? If you don't share values, then you can be stuck in a rut with somebody who you really have no future with. This is why when people tend to live together before they're married, the divorce rates are higher than if they actually just get married without living together. Because if you have marriage on the brain rather than living together on the brain, then you actually look for the values from the outset. Now, Jonathan Haidt writes in his book, The Happiness Hypothesis, that the basic form that marriages and relationships tend to take is in the first couple of years, you have extremely high passionate love and very, very low companionate love. Companionate love meaning things that you share, values that you share, is sort of the love that builds up over time that is different from the I got to be with you every minute, I'm itching to be with you, which tends to very often manifest in physical ways. You see this in every marriage. It's not unusual. It is scientifically based. And what you have to realize is that after the first couple of years, that's going to wane. I mean, that is just a natural thing that happens. It tends to wane, and companionate love tends to replace it. Well, the problem is that if the basis for companionate love is not there, namely shared values, the willingness to build a life together, then things are going to fall apart. So what I've always said to people is, it's even more true for girls than it is for guys, actually, for women than it is for men, is that if you get into a relationship, the fear of being out of the relationship becomes more of a barrier to breaking up than the actual attractiveness of the relationship. People will stay in relationships for a long time because they're afraid of the alternative, as opposed to because they want to buy in. And so they'll stick around in a relationship they know is not working longer than is necessary because they don't have the courage to think, okay, what else is out there? With whom else could I form a deeper relationship? So if you fall in love, this is why I've always said, I said it on Joe Rogan's show, I maintain it, that if you are interested in a long-term relationship, you have to first make that switch in your head, and then you have to decide who fits the bill for that, as opposed to quote unquote falling in love with somebody, and then you decide you want to be in a long-term relationship where the check marks are just not the same. I mean, it'd almost be like, okay, you start a business and you're now looking for somebody to fill a particular role. That's a very different way of seeking an employee than you've been friends with a dude for a long time and now you're starting a business and you kind of like this person and your friends, and so you hire them for the business. The former is likely to work out because you've actually tried to tailor what you are looking for to what the actual requirements are. The latter is unlikely to work out. You end up hiring your friend, he ends up being a schlub, and now your friendship is on the rocks, and it's really kind of stupid because your friendship is on the rocks and they're a bad employee, right? Like, the same thing happens in relationships. People tend to not think rationally about relationships, which makes sense because so much of it is passion. But if you know going in what you are looking for and what you are looking to do with the relationship, you're much more likely to seek important factors. And if you're in a long-term relationship with somebody where there is no future, all you're doing is prolonging the agony by continuing it, Elias.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. I appreciate that.
Really appreciate it. Thanks so much. All right, Julius in Maryland, you're on the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, Julius.
Hi, Ben. Good afternoon. Thanks for taking my call. Yeah, so I have a question about, it's quite similar to something you mentioned a few minutes ago. I think was your first call. So there's this girl who I've been friends with for a while, and I asked her out, and she said no, but she wants to remain friends. I guess she said she doesn't want to jeopardize the friendship. So I'm kind of caught in two minds here because, like, I wanted to become more than friends, but she doesn't want to be. So
yeah, don't count on it.
Yeah.
Don't count on it. Once she said that she wants to be friends, that is her way of saying that she does not want to be anything more than friends. So now the question is, do you want to be friends? And the answer is probably no, right? Not because you can't be friends with somebody, but because you're thinking in different terms, right? What you want from the relationship is a thing that's never going to happen. And so, thinking of yourself as like the backup guy is really a bad way of going about it. You're just putting yourself in a position for her. And also it's awkward for her, right? Because she knows that every time you see her, you're probably thinking about wanting to be more than friends. And so what exactly is the upside for her? I've never been a fan of I don't want to go out with you, but I still want to be friends. Well, I got a lot of friends, frankly. Like, and if I wanted to be friends, I wouldn't have asked you out. I don't ask out my friends, right? Like that's typically not a thing I do. So yeah, I think it's a mistake. Guys tend to do this. They tend to hang around thinking, well, maybe I'll get lucky at one point and she'll change her mind. No, if she wants to change her mind, she can change her mind whether you are hanging out near her or not. And in fact, may in fact be an inhibiting factor for you to be quote unquote friends because she feels like she has the convenience of being able to call you and talk to you about all of her life problems without actually having to engage in a serious relationship, Julius.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. I mean, you described the situation perfectly. I mean, like a lot of sense, man.
Appreciate the call, Julius. All righty. Ezra, New Jersey, you're on the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, Ezra.
Hi, Ben. How are you? Thank you so much for answering my call.
You bet. Go for it.
So my question is, should a man wait till he has the resources to properly get married, or should he date freely just to have fun?
He should never date to have fun. Dating to have fun is because you're an ass. Seriously, this is really, I think dating for fun, first of all, dating is not fun unless you're dating because you really have very little care or compassion for the person who you are dating. Because, I know that we live in a society where consent is the only value. And consent is an extremely high value, right? It is a necessary requirement. But it is necessary but not sufficient. Okay, just because someone consents to do something does not mean, as we have learned, that they are going to particularly find that thing fulfilling or wonderful. Like, you know this in any relationship you have with somebody that you actually love, which is that just because someone consents to do something doesn't mean that they actually want to do it. They may be doing it for you. They may be doing it because they feel there is not a lot of alternative. Now, in a business transaction, all you're looking for is consent. But I don't think that love is a business transaction. I think that love is supposed to be about something more than that. Relationships are supposed to be about something more than that. I know that men find it very convenient to boil down all sexual relationships into mere issues of consent. And now the feminist movement has bought into this as well. But if you care about somebody, then consent is just the first step, right? Then it should be, why are you consenting because you actually would like to have a relationship? Would you like us to have something more long-term? Like, if it's just, if everything is purely on the level, then that is one thing. But very rare, that really only happens on TV, right? The notion that guys go up to girls and they're like, you want to have one night in the sack and let's do it. And the girl's like, yeah, let's do it. And it's just for fun. Like, that is not the way that people tend to actually engage with sex, particularly not women. One of my favorite social science experiments ever done. There's this great social science experiment that was done at a college where they sent an attractive girl into a bar and they asked her to basically walk up to 100 guys and say, do you want to spend the night? And out of the 100 guys, like 97 of them were like, absolutely. And then they sent an attractive guy into a bar to ask girls, would you like to spend the night? And out of 100 girls, 0 of them said yes, right? Men and women do not think about sex the same way. And it is very flattering for men to believe that women think about sex the same way that men do. They do not. Okay, there's a lot more emotional attachment. This is why, for example, in surveys of sexual satisfaction, one of the main factors in female sexual satisfaction is always the depth of the relationship, is a level of comfortableness, right? Men, it doesn't tend to be really a factor, is the comfort level. But for women, it really matters an awful lot. And so if you are dating for quote unquote fun, it's because you actually don't care enough about the person you're dating to make it about more than fun, Ezra. And I think that that's a shortcoming morally.
So Ben, but what about, I'm talking about like the financial resources. Like a lot of men, especially now, they're unemployed. Especially I live in New York. A lot of people are unemployed. They basically living off unemployment. Should we start dating or should we wait till the economy gets better?
Well, I mean, are you intending on getting a job, and then are you intending on getting a job at some point? Like, I don't think that I think you can get married.
I started my own company and I'm waiting. Right now, I'm not getting a salary, but I started my own company recently.
Yes, I mean, if the understanding is that you are going to be dating for marriage and that in the course of that marriage you're going to increase your income, then I don't think that marriage is the chief gap there, right? I think that marriage and finances are a lot more separate than having children and finances, frankly. I think that two consenting adults can get married understanding they're going to experience financial hardship, and I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. Most people, when they get married, are a lot poorer than they are later on in their marriage, just because people get richer as they age. But having kids is a different story. You want to bring kids into a situation where presumably they know where the next meal is coming from. Getting married is a bit of a different thing. I think that you can get married when you're not making a lot of money, and I think that that's not only not bad, I think that can be, in many cases, quite good. I think that having kids when you don't have enough money to support the kids is a different story. I appreciate the call, Ezra. Frankie in Michigan, you're on the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, Frankie.
Hi, Ben. So I have a question for you. My boyfriend and I are both gay, and we've been questioned how we can be conservative despite being gay. I say it's because I value things that conservatives do. Like, I'm even against how Obergefell was decided, which really baffles some people. But I guess my question is, how do I explain to people that conservatism isn't necessarily anti-gay?
So I think that conservatism is about the idea that a limited government exists in order to protect your rights, and that we as individuals have God-given rights. That doesn't mean there's not diversity inside the conservative coalition with regard to how people feel about the morality of homosexuality. It does mean that when you are talking about government policy and what government's role is in society, you can have broad agreement that a limited government is a good idea, and that really has nothing to do with sexual orientation. Frankly, I'm sort of bewildered by the notion that if you're in favor of a small government that intervenes less in people's lives and gives them more freedom, that somehow this cuts against the ability of any gay person to be conservative. I know plenty of gay conservatives ranging from Dave Rubin to Guy Benson, and all they say about this is that their priorities politically match up with the Republican Party. By the way, there are many people inside the Republican Party who personally believe on a moral level that homosexuality may be a religious sin. Right? I'm an Orthodox Jew. That is something that Orthodox Jews believe, and also believe the government has no role in regulating this sort of stuff. I mean, I was libertarian on gay marriage before it was cool to be libertarian on gay marriage, Frankie.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks so much for that, Ben. And congrats to you and the Daily Wire team to move to Nashville, too.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much. All righty. Kenny in Indiana, you're on the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, Kenny.
Hey, Ben. It's great to be on the show. I'm calling. Me and my wife, we've been together about 10 years. We have 2 children. And I've obviously been into politics quite a bit. I listen to your show regularly, and I follow quite a bit of other political sources as well. My question really comes to is my wife has just absolutely zero interest whatsoever. So I'll get her to go out and vote every 4 years. She pretty much votes however I do, which is great, I guess. But I'm curious what your thoughts would be like. How would you go about, getting her more involved in it and something that she would, take an interest in? What would be some suggestions you may have for that?
So number one, if she's not interested in politics, I think you might want to count yourself fortunate, Kenny. Frankly, it doesn't sound like she is deeply invested in politics. That's okay. My wife is not deeply invested in politics. Like, she finds it interesting, and she finds it sort of interesting on a baseline values level. And she'll listen to my show when she's in the car or something. But I think that building a life around a certain level of assumed shared values is fine. It doesn't mean you have to discuss politics all that often. This is what you have friends for. I have lots of friends I discuss politics with far more often than I discuss politics with my wife. I think the real danger comes when you have directly opposing political points of view, because usually that reflects underlying values gaps that make it difficult to build a life together. But frankly, find something else to talk about. I mean, like I rarely talk politics with my wife. It's very rare, especially because we usually agree. So, there's lots of other things to talk about, like our kids, the life that we are building together. We talk about the Bible. We talk about entertainment options. We talk about lots of different stuff. Politics tends to be pretty low on the list, though.
Awesome. All right. Well, I appreciate it and enjoy Nashville. I'm sure you'll like it a lot better.
Thanks, Kenny. The Daily Wire will definitely enjoy Nashville better than California for a whole variety of reasons. John in Arizona, you're on the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, John.
Hey, John. Sorry, man.
No worries. Go for it.
I'm just a little nervous. I'm a huge fan, and I'm 16, and I was just wondering. I don't see. I'm going to the University of Arizona soon, and I was just wondering, is it possible to marry somebody that isn't conservative, doesn't have conservative values? And because a lot of my friends, they don't like America. That's, the whole thing when you're young for a lot of kids. So I was just wondering, how is it possible to date or marry somebody that doesn't, have conservative values?
Don't do it. And when I say conservative values, I don't mean votes Republican. I mean shares values about how you want to raise your kids, your values on gender, your values on morality and sin, your values on religion, right? I think that the more things you share in common in terms of core values, the more likely your relationship is to be successful. It seems that simple common interests in entertainment choices is not going to be enough. So my answer is don't. How do you date somebody who is different from you politically, like radically different and committed to that radical difference? I think that it's generally a mistake. Sometimes political differences don't implicate values. In that case, fine. But very often they do. And so you should really consider seriously before you jump into a relationship. And if you're looking for a conservative, honestly, I'd start with your local church, because that's usually where somebody who shares your values is probably going to be. I hope you enjoyed that clip from The Ben Shapiro Show. If you did, go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you stay up to date on all of our future content.